Some schools also complain of crumbling classrooms and overcrowding. Let's get some insight now from the Basic Education's spokesperson, Mhlanga, who joins us now from Pretoria. Mr. Mhlanga, thank you very much for your time. Let's start with your response to what Equal Education is saying in terms of deadlines that were set since the minimum uniform norms and standards of school infrastructure in 2013, November 2016, some were not met. They were moved to 2020, they were not met.
Well, good afternoon, Masego. Well, Equal Education will always have something to say. And in the time when they are saying what they are saying, the department is continuing its work of delivering much needed infrastructure. If you look at our social media pages, you will see that there are new buildings rising every day of brand new structures that we are building in our schools. The challenge is big. Yes, we are building hundreds and thousands of new structures, and yet you still find some structures that are not in a good condition. But what I like about this interview is that in the beginning there, you played some images which are showing a school with broken windows. The structure itself is in a very good condition, but the windows are broken. And when you look at that, you can see that it's the occupants of that class room where the windows are broken who are doing the damage themselves. So you have that type of situation which we have to contend with. But you also played another story which shows us that there was a storm that caused damage in KZN. That is one other challenge as well that we have to contend with. So we are not able to always continue with the building of new structures, because when you also have to contend with natural phenomena like this one, it means you need to pause what you're doing, go back and fix for the learners who are currently in a school which has been recently damaged. So it's a big challenge. Deadlines, yes, they are there, but we are looking at the actual work that is doing. The deadlines are there in terms of it helping us in terms of our targets. Yes, some we meet, some we don't, especially when it rains like that. It means we have to stop the work of building because you cannot build in the rain. But those are some of the things that are not taken into account when the criticism is leveled against the department regarding its delivery rate.
Are the deadlines not legally binding as well?
They are legally binding, but there are some things that you have no power to control. You will recall that over 2 years in succession in KZN, there were floods that took place there, damaged over 600 schools. There were floods that took place in the Eastern Cape that damaged schools and also stopped some of the projects that we were working on. And when you do your report, monitoring report, you don't factor that in. You just say the department missed its deadline, but you don't ask why. So in some instances, yes, the deadlines are missed, but it's not because we just sit and do nothing. It is because there's rain. I mean, the climate change is a real thing now. It's there and it's causing havoc in our plans as well. We need to factor that in. But you also have situations where there are people with guns who come and chase out our construction workers from site because they are demanding to be part of the projects that are happening there. That too causes delays in the work that we are doing as a department. So it's not as simple as just saying the department is not doing enough. The department is working day and night. As I'm speaking to you today, this morning, we met like 5, 6 CEOs of all the organizations, the entities that are responsible for delivery of school infrastructure in the country, as contracted by the department and provinces. We are holding them to account to say, how much have you done in the past week? Every Monday, we meet them to account for the work that we're doing. So all these accountability measures are put in place to make sure that we accelerate the work that's being done. The Director General, as I'm speaking to you right now, arrived at 4 a.m. in the Eastern Cape to monitor the building of brand new toilets that are taking place there. So I'm telling you about things that are practical, physical, happening on the ground. I'm not talking to you about what's on paper.
Okay, so can you just remind us, for instance, you're saying that there are things that Equal Education, etc., needs to take into account. So maybe if you just remind us what it was that stopped you from meeting deadline in 2016 from the 2013 document. For instance, 2020, we'll definitely understand. We all know what happened. There was lockdown, kids couldn't go to school, etc. So we can definitely say that that was a very difficult year for all sectors, right? And then last year, obviously, the April floods in KZN, etc. The year before that was the July unrest. But let's talk about 2013 to 2020. the deadlines that were not met there. Maybe if you just remind us what was so catastrophic that we couldn't meet those deadlines.
So catastrophic. Well, in the beginning, we had to get provinces to align their plans to the funding that was available. So when you have a plan in education or anywhere in government, what you commit to doing today has to take into account the funding that was allocated in that current financial year. Remember also what is called MTEF, a medium-term expenditure framework, which tells you that in the next 3 years, this is what you're going to do, and the funding gets allocated. So every time the Minister of Finance speaks, they are telling you exactly how much will be allocated for which programs. So sometimes you are forced to agree to doing something outside that expenditure framework, which means for 2 to 3 years, you might not be able to meet the targets that you've set for yourself while you are reprioritizing your budgets. And once you get there, then you need to get the necessary resources in terms of human capacity. We know that some provinces like Eastern Cape, for example, they struggle for a long time to have managers at senior management level to run the infrastructure delivery of the project. We know in Mhlanga as well, there was a time when all the managers in the infrastructure unit resigned all at once, leaving a huge gap, which means there was no planning, there was no monitoring, there was no delivery of any infrastructure projects that was going to happen. So that's what happened. So there are other internal issues as well that we have to contend with as a department, where we struggle to attract professionals from the built environment who should come in to help us, because the salaries that we offer in government are not the same as those they get in the private sector. So we had to come in, we had to make sure that we bring professionals to come into the sector to help us deliver on the promises that were made in the norms and standards. Those are just some of the few things that we've had to deal with after that announcement was made in November 2013 by the minister.
Let's talk about other factors, that are not really in the hands of the education department. We all know that education is a multi-stakeholder, sector. For instance, in the November 2013 announcement by the Minister of the Minimum Uniform Norms and Standards for Infrastructure, we talk about electricity. And obviously right now what we're facing is something that is not in your hands. You talk about generators that have to be available at all schools. Is this happening?
Well, not all schools. It's difficult to say every school must have a generator, but we try to provide alternative means of service delivery. For example, talk about water. We bring water harvesting now. We're also exploring other alternatives in terms of energy. Yes, we buy solar panels and install those, but they get stolen in no time because everybody else in that community needs it. So the danger with providing services to a school in a community where other people don't have is that they will go for that which you have installed in the school and steal it. And you'll never know who, because no one comes forward to say, I know who broke into the school to steal. And it's not just that, they steal all other expensive equipment that they see being delivered in a school. That not only delays, but it also denies the children the opportunity to also experience schooling in an environment where there are facilities that they see in other places. So there's a lot that we have to deal with, and you're correct. We're a multi-stakeholder sector, which means we need the communities, we need SGBs, we need parents, we need the community policing forum, we need everybody else, and each one of the stakeholders must play their part, and actively so. If you expect the other to do the work, it's not going to work. So we really need to take charge of our schools and say to ourselves that we will safeguard this because we value education.
And the reprioritization, for instance, of budgets from the provincial departments, we know that this is also something that has to do with the infrastructure departments as well, etc. How's that going? I mean, if in 2013 you foresaw that you're going to need generators and solar power at all schools, that was just 5 years into our phenomenon of load shedding, right? Things have gotten worse now, so I'm assuming that there's schools that have to now suddenly reprioritize so that at least there's power.
Yeah, well, not all the schools have a need for generators because some of them don't really rely on electricity for teaching and learning.
Yeah.
They use natural light, same as it applies with our examinations. But for administration purposes, that is needed. So there will be a pole from ESCOM coming through to the school If they are able to pay for it, they will pay for it. But also what we are saying is that schools are charged at the same rate as all other organizations, which means there's no mercy shown by the providers of those services. And sometimes some schools are struggling. But in those areas where there's no availability whatsoever of bulk infrastructure, whether it's electricity or water, we have to make other means. We try to support our schools. We allocate monies to every school for school governing bodies to determine what is a priority in their school. Some other schools are able to fundraise and get that support that they need. But we work with them, we support them, we monitor their expenditure, we monitor their needs. But invariably, the challenge is always bigger than available resources.
All right, Elijah Mhlanga, the spokesperson of the National Basic Education Department, thank you for your time. Still to come on All Angles, we'll be bringing you a special focus today, of course, as you can see, of school infrastructure. We'll also be looking at government's broken promises and impact it's having on the pupils.